I'm now live. Hey, everybody. Just letting them know. You said there were like 65 people on before.
Here they come.
Hey, guys.
Here they go. Yep. Do you have anything to...
Yeah. Except for, you know what? They're not cold because my refrigerator's on the blink. It's next to where the refrigerator was on that stand. Second shelf. I'm getting Stuart something cold to drink, you guys. So, okay, let's see here. Hey guys, this is so fun. Hey Jen. Hey Cindy. So this is my first IGTV live where I have been the one that's kind of introducing it on my end. So while I could talk forever on TV or in front of a camera, the technical stuff always kind of intimidates me a little bit. So I've got Stuart here, and he is going to be my backup man. Stuart is. He, of course, won't be on camera. But he's going to be my backup man in case anything goes wrong. So I'm just waiting for Katie to hop on. And once she does, do we ever get to see the mysterious cameraman? He does have a voice. You can speak, can't you?
Yes.
Yes, he can speak. But he likes to remain a man of mystery. He is not my husband. Okay. Katie sent a request. View the request. Go live with Katie. See if this works. Fingers crossed. Waiting for Katie. There she is!
Hey!
I'm so impressed with myself.
You should be. That's awesome. We did it.
I am, despite what I do for a living, I'm kind of technically challenged. Now I'm going to fix this a little bit, or I'm going to let Stuart fix it. Stuart, by the way, Katie, is my cameraman.
I heard you talking about him, and not your husband.
Yeah, no, not my husband, but he is a BFF. So, you know, what can I say? He's got my back and I've got his.
I love that.
And we occasionally boss one another. So,
well, that's what good friends do.
I know. What more can you ask? So everybody, Katie, how long have we been friends, Katie?
Oh my gosh. I feel like, I don't want to say a decade, but I've known you a long time.
Yeah. And my relationship with you actually goes back to your mom, Susie, whom I met through Southern Living Connections with Southern Living Magazine. So we go back a while, but now you have taken over the helm of Garden Media Group.
Yes.
And so exciting. And you're here today because we're going to talk about gardening trends.
I can't wait. Yeah, we actually, my mom, 20 years ago, Linda, it's the anniversary of our Garden Trends report. Sometimes I look back and I think my mom was such, little shout out to her because she's watching my kids during this all virtual thing. It's thank goodness for moms.
Well, and she was a great pioneer and I think really ahead of her time. I mean,
well, thank you.
Yeah, I think she really knew that the business aspect of it and then the gratification and the enjoyment that we all get out of it personally, she knew how that merged together, and she's just really been an influencer of her own kind in this.
Thank you. I'll tell her. She's at the playground, so she's not watching.
But she can pay us later.
Yeah, she can.
So I've even got my notes, because I printed out the report that you sent. So I don't think it's just Garden Media Group. Aren't other publications and organizations putting out trend reports too?
Absolutely. Well, our report is downloaded by over 10,000 people each year. And a lot of people do report on the trends, on our trends.
Right.
In fact, for 2 years in a row, we picked the color of the year, and then Pantone agreed with us, which was fun. Yes.
So what was it last year?
Well, so last year, our color was indigo, and they picked, God, I can't even remember now. So you know how important all that stuff is? But when we picked, it was violet, ultraviolet, they picked, and we picked violet. That was one year.
Green. You guys picked the green.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah, that was my personal favorite. But So I've been reading up on gardening trends, and it seems to me that kind of, from what I've read, they fall into two kind of groups, like macro trends and micro trends.
Bingo.
And yeah, and for me, the micro trends would be, what I personally am doing in my garden and what plants are trendy, what color palettes are trendy, that kind of thing. But you really deal with it from an industry perspective and a more kind of universal perspective of where culture and ecology and industry and then us as gardeners all kind of merge together. Is that right?
I love the way that you describe that, because what we like to do is look at what trends are out of our industry and how they are affecting our industry. And so
Right.
a lot of those are those macro trends, like how are people living? Where are people moving? What are people doing? What are their jobs? And so those macro trends really affect what we do as people. And then of course, how we garden. And so it trickles down, but I love looking at those macro trends. That's one of my research. That kind of research is one of the most fun things I think to do, is to figure out, get inside people's heads and figure out why they're doing certain things.
Right. And is it a healthy thing to do for the environment and for us personally as gardeners, things like that? Well, I love, like I said, I have been studying it. I printed it out, and I would encourage you guys, can they print it out as well? Can they go online and find it somewhere?
Absolutely. Yes. gardenmediagroup.com/trends. I also think I have a link in my bio, but if not, I will put it there, which just means I know so many people. I'm sure your audience all knows this, right, Linda? How many times you get asked question, what is link in bio? Tap on Linda's name or my name, and that's our bio. And you can access the garden trends that way. And a shout out to my coworker, James. He's like my steward. He puts together a beautiful PowerPoint of pictures and photographs that help tell a story in the trends as well. So it's a free download.
Okay, very good. And the other thing is, for those of you out there who asked, if you're on YouTube, that I guess you're not watching now, but I am going to put this on YouTube later. So for people who are not on IGTV, they can see it later on YouTube. And I will also in the description put a link to your trends report.
Awesome. Great.
But let's talk about it, because I think the thing that stood out to me most in like the second paragraph was that we're in the middle of a great reset.
Yes.
And boy, not just in gardening trends.
Yes.
I think everything is in the midst of a great
Exactly.
reset.
When you talk about macro trends, this is exactly what we're talking about. We are, to use a computer analogy, the Control-Alt-Delete. We hit reset back on our computer screens. Our life computer screens went blank. And we were all sitting there staring at a blank screen saying, what do we do now? And it gave so many people a beautiful opportunity to look at what they were doing in their lives, whether it be a job they didn't like, or, a relationship you were in, or a backyard that was just one mess of a lawn. And you now get to change and make your life more beautiful in many, many ways. And I think that is such a powerful moment. A lot of people, I think, and of course, a lot of people during Corona were working really hard, and a lot of people suffered a lot. And I think that it gives a little bit of positivity to it, that it gives everybody the opportunity to pivot their life and make it better if you want.
Well, did I read that you said that since Corona hit that like there's 16,000 more gardeners or something?
Well, so when we did the research, it was 16 million new gardeners, but I think that number now is up to 24 million. The estimates are between 16 to 24 million new gardeners.
In what context is that? Is that just our country? Is that world? I mean,
Country.
What frame of reference? Our country. Okay.
Yes. And a big chunk of them were in that younger demographic. So people who were leaving the cities, they had never gardened before, or maybe first-time home buyers, but new gardeners, new people who had never, and I'm sure your channel exploded too.
Well, and what I really found with friends of mine, younger friends of mine, these are all, a lot of them were and are working professionals, but they never had time to really relate to their garden or indulge in the passion that is gardening because they were on the road too much or they traveled too much or whatever.
Exactly.
And they're working from home, and as a little respite from their Zoom meetings or whatever, they could go outside and dig around. They had the luxury of time to plant a seed and see it come to fruition and turn into a tomato. And I love that, because I think for so many of us before this, it was kind of like a them or us. There was the garden, and then there were those of us that were inside. And now that line has been blurred. And even people who used to have someone else do most of their garden work, their mowing, their planting or whatever, now they're really interacting personally with it. Oh, I'll do that myself. And boy,
Yes.
it's fun and it's gratifying. Learn something.
I think you hit the nail on the head. When people ask me, and I ask this question of you too, why don't people garden more? I think the competition for time, that's the number one reason. People understand the benefits. Everyone wants to have a homegrown tomato. Who doesn't love a homegrown tomato? But I think it's the karate, the dance, you know, the soccer practice, brunch with girlfriends, whatever that is, whatever that time commitment is. And that's what happened during COVID, is we all had a lot more time on our hands.
And a lot of the time that I think we spent consuming.
Yes.
I mean, shopping, whether it was grocery store shopping or going to the, or just consuming in general. Now we really understand that whole concept of growing it yourself, grow your own, farm to table, even if my farm is nothing but a raised bed. You know, in the backyard. And I love that. I really do.
And somebody asked about the definition of gardener, and I'm not sure if you were asking about the research on the 24 million, but that research talks about if you bought a plant for the first time to grow at home, whether that be an indoor plant, and I think that's an important distinction, is that houseplants are so popular, but buying a plant for the first time to grow at home makes you a gardener, whether you like to believe it or not.
Because you're all of a sudden responsible for something.
Exactly.
And I have often said, I guess I kind of got into gardening when I was in high school because I just loved plants. And I've often said that houseplants were my gateway drug to full-time gardening. And houseplants and growing plants indoors, you know, succulents to just the common spider plant. That is so, talk about a gardening trend. That is so popular right now.
So popular. Yes, I know. I'm seeing people who are loving houseplants. I mean, it is absolutely, I mean, that's not even a trend anymore. People are into houseplants, and I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't either. And especially for young people, because it is such an expression of design as well as having a living organic thing, because they're using them in their apartments. My son and daughter-in-law to be, they're all about, you know, growing them in their loft apartments. It's kind of that 70s fern bar.
Yes, I love it. It's all back. Macrame's even back.
But after a while, then, you know, you can only grow so many houseplants before you have to move either to your balcony, which I read is a big trend, balcony gardening. And I think that's the other thing about gardening is, no matter how small your venue or how large your venue, you can always do some kind of gardening, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think that's what people are learning about this experience, is just having a plant nearby, whether it be a small container or you've got a whole topiary garden like Linda's. You know, it's something that having a plant nearby makes us happy. And
Jenny Laundry Garden just joined us. I have to give her a shout out. We did a beautiful garden tour. Her home in the UK and her garden, and I see so many people out there that I just want to say hey to. So
yes, hi everybody. We're so glad you're here. Shoot us questions. We love to answer your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing I went today to get some stuff for fall, and I think I just was getting some mums, and mums are one of those kind of plants. It kind of falls in favor and kind of falls out of favor. But this year I'm going monochromatic, doing all one color, and that color is white, which is a huge garden trend, I guess, and it remains popular.
Yes, in 2000 and so on our website you can look back at all of our past trends reports too. So
Okay.
in 2019 we had moonlight gardens, and so gardens that not only flowers that bloom at night but white flowers being very, very popular. So absolutely, scented flowers are good in moon gardens as well, but I love white. It is like putting a flashlight in your garden. It draws your eye to that spot. Absolutely, white I think is such a classic area, and I'm doing my own little white garden, a new white garden as well. Yes,
we're all Vita Sackville West wannabes. I used to work, well, I still do a segment on our local TV NBC affiliate here, and my longtime buddy Linda Kavanaugh that I worked with for years there, she and I helped her with her garden. She wouldn't have any color in her garden whatsoever. It all had to be white and green. And she was way behind, or way in front of her friend. She said most of the time, being a news anchor, that she was at home, it was in the evening or after dark. And so she wanted that flashlight and those hues to illuminate her dark spaces and be able to enjoy her garden at any time of day, which shows the flexibility of gardening.
That's beautiful. Oh, my light just went out.
Uh-oh. Speaking of white gardens, if you had a white plant or a white gardenia tucked behind your ear right now, Katie.
Ooh, I have a gardenia in bloom as we speak. I should go get it.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I want to ask you, I love, can I just, okay, Stuart is saying goodbye. So everybody say goodbye to
Thanks, Stuart.
Stuart enables me technologically. And I enable him in other ways. Thank you, Stuart. Like I say, we have each other's backs.
That's awesome.
But I want to quote this one line from your report that says, "Don't keep to the status quo by repeating what you've been doing."
Yes.
And I think that speaks to those of us retailers in the industry, wholesalers in the industry, growers. Speak to that a little bit, if you would.
Absolutely. I think that when I was interviewing some people who run garden centers, and that was one of the things that they kept saying over and over again is they do a lot of things because someone else who owned the garden center did it before them, like custom containers for customers. And they didn't make a lot of money on it, and there was not a lot of joy in it. Or 6 events in a weekend. Planning an event, for anyone who has ever done it, you know it's a lot of work. And was there that big payoff for the garden center? So for them, it was the take a look at things that you're doing, and if they're not benefiting you, whether that be emotionally or your bottom line, stop.
Yeah, I'm answering, looking at some questions.
That's good. We can answer them. Hi from Romania.
When can you prune boxwood for topiary? And I kind of clip on them a little bit pretty much all throughout the year, though obviously the time to do really aggressive pruning is in spring and right now. But that's part of that gratification you were talking about of and learning. And if you don't do it, how do you how do you learn if you're not putting some of those, if you're letting somebody else put the compositions together, that kind of takes the fun out of it, I think. And
definitely,
how do you learn about what works well together from a design standpoint and from a horticultural standpoint?
Yes. Yeah. And not being afraid to change. And I think a lot of people are afraid of change. And so that pivot is so important, and just go ahead and go for it.
Yeah. And not afraid. I have killed so many plants, Katie.
And that's so good for people to hear. It's so important.
Yeah, I am on a constant rotation of dead and dying plants. And sometimes it's my fault and sometimes it's not my fault. But I think that it's the difference between, in some ways, just gardening and interior design. This isn't a candlestick we're just putting on our mantle. This is a living, growing thing that is a heartbeat of its own, and it may last and it may not last, but we learn in the process. And I sometimes give people permission to kill their topiaries or kill their plants, because it does happen. And a lot of the damage to the plants have been done even before we get them, through improper growing procedures at the front end or wanting it to already look completely mature when we buy it, because that's a thing. But by then it's too root bound. So, so you have to be willing to take a risk that something might not. That gives you an opportunity to try something else.
I love the quote, and I don't know who first said it, but I haven't fully grown a plant until I've killed it 3 times.
Or moved it 3 times.
Right, exactly.
Lots of thumbs up on that one. Yes. Yes, I agree. And I also have a 3 strikes and you're out philosophy. Do 3 times, then I'm sorry, we just weren't meant to be in a long-term relationship together.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, and you got to go. Okay, so let me look at, so this I'm really curious about. So this is a term I was not familiar with, so I want you to flesh it out a little bit. Broadacre cities. This is fascinating to me.
Are you a Frank Lloyd Wright fan, or anybody out there? Are you guys Frank?
Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
I've been to Taliesin West. I've been to Taliesin East. I've done the tours in Chicago. When we were researching the concept of people leaving cities and the whole concept of during Corona, we all really turned into our neighborhood. You know, my local neighborhood restaurant was selling for Mother's Day from the local garden center bouquets with every meal you ordered. So it was a turn to this community and return to this neighborhood. So I'm researching for the trends, which is what we do. Talk to people, and we research online and read books. And I stumbled across the Broadacre city. And I thought, Frank Lloyd Wright, this can't be true. I think I know everything about him. Well,
Frank Lloyd Wright fans out there, by the way.
I see it. I love him.
Perfect time.
So he created this thing almost 100 years ago. He was doing an exhibit at the Met Museum in New York, and it was a return to what he saw as a return to community. At that time, a lot of industrialization was happening, so people are moving to the cities, and Frank was like, nope, this is not good. My houses won't work there, or whatever he thought. The community is so important, and he designed a Broadacre city. The concept is everyone has at least an acre. If you have more people in your house, you get more space, and you have a school, you have a firehouse, you have a police station, you've got a farm, a local hospital. Every community has these important things, but also each person grows their own garden. Every plot of land has a garden. And that I thought, how do I not know about this concept? Now, it didn't take off. But I do see that happening now, this return to community, sharing food with our neighbors, growing our own food, reliance on each other rather than the big boxes of the world.
And a lower carbon footprint, because nobody has to travel as far. There's not packaging. You know, another great reason for everybody out there to support their local community-supported agriculture, your CSA or your farmers markets or whatever, because things don't travel as far, but it's all about, that neighborliness and the fact that, well, my brother, for example, sent me a picture of someone was having a neighborhood cello concert on her front porch, and she was playing the cello, and pulled up chairs, and we're sitting outside, and what a gift. And during this really divisive atmosphere that we're in right now, I love the fact that gardens bring us together.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to be politically like-minded, because if you love a garden, you've got a connection. And I love the community that is gardeners.
I agree.
It's just such a wonderful thing that connects us all and brings us together. And I love that aspect of it too. Yeah, I think that that just the inclusiveness and the beehiviness is there. We're just like in our own supportive hive, and I love that concept. So
before we go, so a lot of people during this whole quarantine left cities, and one of the reasons they said was because two top reasons. The first was because they missed being close to their family. So go figure, you know, that community, our family, we've all grown up moving apart from each other. And the second reason was they missed fresh air and nature.
Fresh air.
So yeah, I love that.
Isn't it the truth? And to be able to just indulge in it and see so many people walking around outside and knowing how fortunate if you can walk outside. I mean, because some people, my son lives in Singapore and he has to come out of his high rise and get to a park and whatever, which is an impediment. Whereas so many of us, I think, take for granted the fact that, oh my gosh, I can walk out my back door and I can see butterflies, migrating, and I can see, and I can swat a mosquito, and even have its charm because you're interacting, I think, with the outdoors.
Yes.
And not just your neighbor, but everything else. And I think we have an appreciation for, we're part of something. We're part of an ecosystem. We're not just man
living
is
here alone.
Here, we're all part of the big. We're all part of the big picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love. First of all, I love the descriptors that you put. I'm a big wordsmith. I love this kind of thing. I get off. You've got the backyard aficionado. Yes. That trend, and how would you describe that?
So, as you mentioned, during all Corona, we estimate between 16 and 24 million new gardeners. And a lot of people here are saying that gardening got them through this difficult period. And I think we talked about one of the reasons is time. Of course, there is more time. But I think one of those big reasons is it was something we could control. You can plant a seed and know it would grow. But we all didn't know what the next day was going to bring. So the backyard aficionado is our new gardener. We've got all these new people. They're learning from your channels. They're learning from all of these wonderful people we have out there on the internet and on YouTube, and they're putting it into practice. So they're now growing things. And what we found in our research is they're interested in three things. And I'm curious if you guys out there are new gardeners, what were the things that you loved this year? What did you try? Let me guess, growing food, because that was one of the big popular, that term victory garden. You heard that. If you don't know what they were.
So share that metric. You said that victory garden was the most Googled term in.
Yes. So on like April 15th, let's say the middle of April was the peak of Googling for victory gardens. So this is a term that's been around since World War I. It was really popular in World War II, but on April 15th, it peaked in spikes for people searching, what's a victory garden and how can I have one in my own backyard? So victory gardens, for you if you don't know, the concept is just a war effort to help let people, food and other items go to the troops. You grow your own food in your own backyard. And 80% in World War II, 80% of the food in our country was grown in people's backyards. It's amazing. But people were growing food. I mean, whether they didn't know when their next trip to the grocery store was going to be, or if they go to the grocery store and, toilet paper sold out, what's next? Tomatoes? Who knows? And so it's a big thing.
Never so many 30-year-olds proud of shishito peppers. There were lots of shishito peppers, and it was so ceremonial, the way they would bring them in.
I know. And hot peppers were trending a few years ago too, especially with men. So men love to grow hot peppers for whatever reason.
Well, and the other thing that I love is I had so many friends who said it is really aligning all the generations now. So, women my age were helping their kids garden and then they in turn were helping their kids garden. So there was this multi-generational dimension to it that I just loved. And one of my favorite things that I say is nothing makes you channel that inner kindergartner of yours quite as much as seeing a seed sprout. I mean, there's just no rush like it.
I thought you were going to say seeing a worm, but a seed sprout is pretty good too. You're right. We all did that in kindergarten, but I'll tell you what, the 6-year-olds in my life go crazy for worms.
For worms and roly-polies.
Yes.
I mean, the physics of that, or that, just, it is fascinating. I mean,
yes.
And we're getting, earlier when we were talking about mosquitoes, lots of comments about how bad the mosquitoes. What's your favorite tip for battling mosquitoes?
Well, you know what? Do you get bit a lot?
The thing is, you know, I am one of those blessed individuals that doesn't have the blood type or the pheromones or whatever it is that can light on me and they don't bite. So they just kind of leave me alone. Whereas like my photographer, poor Stuart, he is just, God love him. I mean,
I know.
Magnet.
I am the same way. So my theory is, I've heard the blood type thing is a myth. I want to know what you guys think, but I think they bite us, but we don't have the same chemical reaction. Who knows what it is? I don't have that chemical reaction, but my daughter does. So there's these incense sticks that are natural citronella. They look like big incense. I love those for my daughter. I put those around the house. They smell great, especially when we get back to having parties or people in the yard. They smell great, and the smoke repels the insects as well. You know, all those natural plants, citronella and lavender, I'll rub them on Quinn, my daughter, because she just gets attacked. And so I like to try all natural things as much as I can.
Yeah, I have found that kind of a multi-layer, kind of like sunscreen, you put on layer after layer of sunscreen, that I just try a bunch of different things. Yeah. So, you know, plants that naturally repel mosquitoes, citronella oil, you know, those kinds of things. And recently I used some of these LED Bed Zappers that just, so I use a multiplicity of different things. But if you have as much greenery as I do, and especially places. And by the way, Katie, let's both do a big shout out to all of those people in California
Absolutely.
And in those states. Another thing that we take for granted is that we can go out in our gardens and garden. And right now, so many people cannot, and their homes are destroyed, and their landscapes, and their much loved little piece of heaven on earth. And our heart goes out to all of you.
Absolutely. I've heard some terrible stories, and the smoke is making, I don't know if it's made its way to Oklahoma, but they say here on the East Coast, we can even see the smoke all the way across the country.
Yeah. It's, it reminds me of the Dust Bowl. You know, I live in Oklahoma, which is kind of the heartland of the Dust Bowl. And back during the worst of times, you could see that cloud of dust. It made it all the way to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, it's really scary, and that much more imperative upon all of us to do what we can to be responsible in the garden and be good stewards of where we are. Okay, so I loved this one because I have a small garden, and you call it tiny gratification.
Yes, I love it. So, you know, here is where it kind of ties back to that backyard aficionado. A lot of people here are saying that they grew some tomatoes in pots in their driveway, or they're trying a topiary for the first time this year. I think whether you're a new gardener or a long-time gardener, the tiny gratification is that tiny plants are cute. They're adorable. I love them, but they will do something faster. So you've got a tiny little African violet. It's going to flower faster. Or the micro tom, which is a little tiny tomato, it's going to fruit faster. So patience is a virtue of gardeners. And, you know, we all love flower bulbs. Flower bulbs are one of my favorite plants to plant, but it takes patience because you plant them now, they don't bloom till spring. So this tiny gratification is helping these new gardeners understand, okay, you can get something now, get hooked on the process, and then we'll treat you to those plants that only bloom every 2 years.
Not only do you get the product, you get the evolution of the product. So I certainly don't have room to grow great big pumpkins in my landscape, but I could grow Jack B. Littles or
or Crunchkins.
And so not only did I get those little pumpkins sooner, but I saw that they were turning into pumpkins sooner. Yes. I can enjoy the process and the evolution and the entire life cycle of it. And plus they just fit in smaller spaces. So a lot of us are doing raised bed gardening or have formal potages kind of like mine. And you really can't plant things that are extremely rambunctious.
Nope.
Things that have been hybridized to be naturally contained. Sunburst squash, or, you know, some of the other smaller squashes, things like tiny eggplants and radishes. And talk about kid friendly, you know, that's dollhouse gardening. So
Oh, I love it.
yeah, kids can really get into that.
Well, and that's one trend. A lot of people ask us, have we missed any trends? Fairy gardening is one trend we did miss. We didn't think it was going to catch on. So I like dollhouse gardening. Maybe we've got something there for 2022.
And I think I have a sister who was brilliant, extremely creative, and very whimsical. And she used to make, long before you could buy a little tiny gnome or little tiny garden houses, at your local nursery, she would build them. I mean, she would build tiny little twig furniture.
Wow.
A skeletized leaf and do something with it. She would do all of these magical things. So to me, that's a real fairy garden, where you're really
making things out of nature. Totally agree. Yes.
And the charm and the delight and the surprise in a kid's eyes when they just like that. There's no equivalent. There's real equivalent.
And most people who I talk to who are avid gardeners, they have the story of, it started when I was young. Someone, maybe a family member or a friend or a neighbor, introduced them to it. So if there are kids in your life, get them into gardening. Get some seeds, throw them in a little, chicken egg carton, whatever.
Right. Small Scape Gardens just said that miniature gardens are her world. And I think that's so true. And it's like I say, you can garden on any level. I read also Windowsill Gardening is huge right now. I did a lot of that. Katie, I'm embarrassed to say this. I was such a plant nerd that in college I selected my dorm room based on light exposure.
That's first. I have never heard that. I love it.
So that my acrylic ladder plant stand
would maximize the lighting. I love it.
I'm embarrassed myself.
Gotta say hey to Stacy. Our friend Stacy tuned in, and hey to everybody.
I miss Stacy. I miss seeing you guys at garden writers and conventions and things like that. So, but you and I don't know that I can announce this. So I'm not going to announce it. I'm just going to be very secretive to say that you and I might be working kind of on a really cool project together.
I'm very bad at keeping secrets, so we need to change the subject because I'm just going to.
Okay, but I think it's going to be really fun. So we'll
stay tuned for that big reveal.
Yeah, a big tease. Okay, so let's move on and tell me what you mean by design abundance.
So this is another thing that landscape designers, we interview a lot of landscape designers, landscape architects for our trends report. And one of the things we heard them say was that people are requesting pollinator spaces. So gardens that are more richly, we love pollinators and they try to fit into our trends every year, but gardens that are really, really richly designed. So I love the quote that it's from one of my favorite garden designers, Claudia West. She's a brilliant woman who is really focused on the ecology of plants and how they work together. But she said, people don't want gardens just to be parsley around the turkey. So your home, and then you've got, just your little ring of plants around your home, right? Yeah. They don't want that. And we don't want mulch is our friend for sure, but people need to understand. Hey, Brenda, that people need to understand that there are better things than mulch. You can plant ground covers. Mulch takes a lot of work. Weeding, it's expensive to lay it down. So this is also about the trend of using plants to create living spaces in your backyards.
And living mulch.
Living mulch.
Living mulch and living spaces and just blurring the lines between inside and out. And making sure that, stand at your kitchen window and look, and what do you see? That's where I get my most important design inspiration is I look and I see what can I add or what can I take out? Yes. And I think that informs it. And I think it's just such a different kind of expression of design and composition. And I think composition is a real underrated component of gardening. Just the joy you can get out of putting different things together. And
as we said, moving them 3 times, because you're not going to get it right maybe the first time. And so, and Laura from How's It Growing New Jersey said, more plants means fewer weeds. So I think that is one of the things as these new gardeners are coming out of a hot summer. We had a great year in Pennsylvania for gardening. It was beautiful. A right amount of rain, right amount of sun. So that means a lot of weeds. And so I think a lot of people are going to be struggling with weeds. So this trend really speaks to the fact that you don't have to struggle with weeds. Plant more plants.
Yeah. And people ask me all of the time, what do I do about weeding? And, you know, I'm not being smug when I say I don't have that much of a weed problem because I'm so planted, which is a reason I have lots of mosquitoes. But the other thing is that it helps, well, so many reasons. It helps soil erosion. It helps on our windy prairie. It helps keep the topsoil intact. There's just so many different reasons in addition to pollinators and visual interest and all of that thing. I'm going to end on one that really speaks personally to me because I'm making a change because of it. Okay, so the last thing you have is turn out the lights, and they are LED. And there's string lights in the back. I don't have a lot of other lighting, but now I typically kept those on all night, but I'm going to put them on a timer now so that I don't have them on all night. So speak to that a little bit and how they're a deterrent for insects. And
I totally am with you. I had no idea. So I read Doug Tallamy's new book, Nature's Best Hope, which I have somewhere around here. And he, in that book, talks about how we can all create national parks in our own backyards. And he outlines all different ways how we can each make a difference. I see Johanna, however you pronounce her name, Joanna, she has beehives. She's creating pollinator gardens. You know, people can make a difference in their own backyard. And then he goes on to talk about other ways you can make a difference with your hardscaping. One way is to cover all your window wells. If you have window wells in your house, little animals will fall down those. But then when I was reading, he said, and turn out the lights. I thought, what? Why does that matter? But if you think back to when you were a kid, I would go out on my front porch and I couldn't even go out there. You flick on the porch light and it was swarmed with moths.
Right.
Nowadays, my lights don't get that much attraction. That light at night attracts the insects, which exhausts them, and it makes them easier prey for bats and birds. And so it's just another detriment that's as simple as either flipping a switch or setting a timer or setting a motion sensor, or like you said, LEDs. The white light of LEDs is a lot less attractive to them. So there's a lot of really easy changes you can make, and that's one little thing that you're doing in your own backyard to make a difference.
Yeah, just think about, the frantic nature of when you see a bug around a light. And I know we all too often, especially because it's mosquitoes, and I wouldn't mind if some of those bats came in and ate mosquitoes. But it is exhausting to them. And so many of them, may not personally like them, but they are pollinators, and we all live on this planet. We all live on this planet together. So that's something that I'm trying to be more mindful of. And I always thought, because I didn't have the great big floodlights and all of that kind of thing, that I was being responsible. So there are gradations of responsibility. So I can do things even on the margins. Yeah. And I do one topic, and I want to give a shout out. Jeffrey earlier was talking about how it was a really difficult year in San Antonio this year. I'm wondering if you're still on, if you could let us know. Somebody said, now after meeting Linda, I need a larger yard. There are lots of people in the neighborhood that just kind of groan when I head their way.
How much property though do you grow in? I mean, you don't have like 10 acres, right?
Oh, no. I live in a historical preservation area, Katie, that is on a very small lot. I've done whatever I could. I wish I could tell you exactly what the dimensions were. I want to say it's like 0.61.
Yeah, you guys can do it on, I thought so. I didn't want to say you have.
No, it's not large at all, but I maximize what I have. I have lots of variety, as much variety as I can get. And it's enough if it's enough for me to take care of and be able to handle rather manageably.
Mm-hmm.
But it's enough to express myself. And I think that as long as what you have is enough of a tableau to be able to express yourself, then that's, I think that's what's important, because it is such a form of expression. And back to that community thing, it is such a gift to the community.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably, I've received lots of really kind comments from people this year, and I'm sure you have too, because so many people are learning about gardening. But if you think that gardening isn't important, a healer or whatever, there is a man that I've been communicating with who contacted me at the beginning of the summer and said that he had seizures and he had epilepsy and he was trying to get off of his medication, and he started gardening and he put in a Zen garden, and he is just a complete really infatuated with it. And he said his seizures have stopped.
Isn't that amazing?
So there is a real transformative quality about it, and it can lift people's spirits. If you're having a really, bad day, it can be someone's happy place when they drive by.
Yeah, and I think back to that community aspect. I mean, more people probably were walking in your neighborhood than ever before, and they got a chance to really look up close and see what you're growing. And I think that never happened before. We didn't have the time to do that and get to know that this person who is famous on the internet for her garden lives just in my backyard. You never know what's around the corner in your neighborhood.
And to strike up a conversation. I have met people in my neighborhood that I always thought maybe were a little standoffish or aloof or whatever. And no, it's just that we never really opportunity to meet. Yeah. So is it something that we can mutually enjoy? It's an opportunity for conversation and getting to know people who may not think like you or may not live like you, or if your generation. It's such an opportunity. And I just love that. I want to talk a little bit, and then I will let you go. I have really monopolized so much of your time, but you and I
it's been fun.
We start talking, and then we kind of can't talk. I think Katie, it was with you that it was the first time I ever called myself a Boxwood slut. on the web.
And I thought, did she really just do that? And I thought, she's good with it. I'm going with it.
Yeah, I mean, we can be a little bit irreverent and have fun.
Absolutely.
But I want to talk a little bit about the use of natives, because here is something from a design standpoint. And I would love you guys out there, if you have ways that you are, and I know it may be hard for us to address it here, but if there are ways that you could infuse this conversation in comments or later on, just contact me, contact Katie, because I want to figure out a way in small landscapes like mine to use more native plants. Because I know the beauty of natives on the prairie, which is big sky, vastness, lots of space, infinite expanses. How I truly think they are the most beautiful. So I'm trying to figure out ways that I can use more native plants in a small, more controlled setting and really optimize their beauty. Do you have any input on that?
Well, I think that I've seen things called pocket meadows. So you can do anything as small as, 5 square feet of a little pocket meadow. And you can also do native container gardens. So I think that natives don't have to play by themselves. That's the great thing, is that you can find a native that works with other plants. And oftentimes, our other plants are bred to bloom their heads off. And so natives are going to be more gentle in your garden. So oftentimes you might want them paired with another plant, whether to have the color of the foliage that's all there all year round. But I think what you said is really important, is to have a place for natives in your garden. And your natives are different than mine. And so that's another important distinction, is ask your local garden center what is right for your area, because I'm here in Pennsylvania and it's going to be different. But natives they're conserve water. They can tolerate our climate swings that we have in our regions. And so you might not be fighting with some of the non-natives, like you're having trouble gardening, maybe because you're trying to put the wrong plant in the wrong place.
Yeah, and the other thing is I did a post recently about things not to plant because they're so invasive. Because they're invasive here, maybe doesn't mean that they're invasive there. And things that you have that are invasive where you are, I can't even get established in pot culture. So it's know where you live, where you garden, what your context is.
Yes.
And I think that is so important. But one thing about natives, which that's my best takeaway. My best takeaway from this, for me personally, and I always say, whenever you listen to any of these conversations, always look through the lens of what's in it for me.
Absolutely.
What is in it for me in my garden? And so you just informed me that what's in it for me is I have so much structure in my garden with lots of evergreens, lots of topiaries, lots of clipped forms. And I love the tension between the things that kind of wave and are looser and more billowy. And natives are often looser and more billowy, lots of grass and through, and I love containers. So a way for me to infuse more natives in my garden in a way that still speaks the same language.
I think that would be beautiful. I can't wait to see that video.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'll just put that on the list. My list is getting longer and longer. Katie, my dear, thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you, everybody out there. This was so much fun. You guys are very engaging, and I love it.
Katie, tell everybody again where they can get a copy of your trends report.
Yeah, so gardenmediagroup.com/trends, or if it's not in my profile, I will add a link in my bio right now so you can just click on it and download the entire report.
Yeah, and you can find her at Garden Media on Instagram. Are you on YouTube?
Yes. Yep, YouTube, Facebook, all of them, Garden Media, or Katie GMG. I'm there too. And I just saw someone shout out Chanticleer Gardens, which I have to agree with, because if you've never been to Chanticleer Gardens, it is one of the premier gardens. It's a tiny little garden, but they have great examples of natives. Beautiful garden in my region here. We're lucky to have a lot of beautiful gardens here.
In the Chanticleer, you know what we should do? We should do a bucket list thing where we come up with a list of gardens, bucket list for gardeners, of gardens that every American should see. Every American should see, because I'm embarrassed to say that I think I've seen more gardens in other countries than I have in my own.
Well, I can give you 30 in the Philadelphia region.
I know. So get your guest room ready. Thanks, Katie. Give your mom
so much fun. I will. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.